Growers are always telling us that finding time to catch up and have a bit of a yarn really does help their well-being. And tonight's webinar is all about that too, as well as Sam sharing his practical tips and advice on what he does to get through some of the stuff that life throws at him. It's also a great opportunity to learn from each other, because essentially that's what Farm Strong's all about. We're sharing practical well-being advice and tips that growers and farmers have told us work for them on the farm or orchard, backed up by that science of well-being. So through tonight's call, the chat box is going to be open to everyone. So as we're talking and Sam and Jared are chatting, send through any questions you've got to Sam. And we'll also be asking you to share some of your own practical well-being tips tonight too. Now I'm just going to quickly hand over to Anthony Hayward, General Manager of Vegetables New Zealand, who's just going to say a few words before we kick into tonight's session. Thanks, Anthony.
Welcome everybody. I'd just like to give a big thank you to both Jared and Sam for coming on tonight. This has kind of been a conversation that's been a long time coming. We at Vegetables New Zealand and with the Pukekohe Vegetable Growers Association have been really keen to do some event, and this has happened and we're really proud to be part of it. Obviously growing vegetables is very important for keeping nutrition and health into our diet, but that helps our body. So that's only possibly half the solution, and what we have found with Farm Strong, getting the mental part is just as important as getting the physical part right. So that's why we're here tonight, to make sure that we have the tools and possibly the conversations to make sure that we don't forget about the very important part of being mentally well as being physically well. So I'm going to hand it over to Jared, I think, who's going to take us from here.
I'm Jared Vaughan. I'm the Program Director for Farm Strong, and it's my pleasure to be on your behalf asking questions of Samuel tonight. We will have the chat box operating. So what really encourage you to do is to send through your questions for Sam in the chat box. Now, the good thing is we won't identify who you are, so you can actually ask any question and it won't be attributed to you. So only Chrissy and I will see the questions that you ask. And actually my preference is to have the whole session, which is Sam throwing your questions to Sam about the practical things he does, what he's learned from sport and farming, about how to look after himself, how to deal with that stress and pressure, and just the practical things that he does. But first I will hand over to you, Sam, and if you just give a bit of background about yourself, and if some questions don't come through straight away, I've got some that I'm keen to ask you. So hand over to you, Sam.
Awesome. Thanks, Gerard. Great to be on. Pity we can't be doing this in person. I love getting in front of people and talking and actually just getting to know the room. But that's just the way the world is at the moment. And sometimes you've got to make the most of this technology because we've got it here. But I'll give you a couple of minutes blurt about myself, because I realise some people might not know a lot about myself or what I do. So been lucky enough to grow up in the Manawatu. So we grew up in pretty much on the border between Linton and Opiki. So grew up with going to a primary school, Opiki, which depends where you come from in the country. Some people say it's the best potato growing location in New Zealand. I'm sure there's some other people that'll debate on that. So we grew up with all those in-house jokes and really enjoyed it. But for myself, I'm one of four boys. We're very close in age. There's only 5 years between all four of us, and we had what I'd call a typical New Zealand rural upbringing. We were always told, right, get outside, you're creating a mess in the house, go and just entertain yourselves. And we had an awesome time growing up. We got to do some of those things that you probably weren't meant to do. We used to climb into the hay shed and be chasing possums around with the two fox terriers that we had, and Dad would come round a couple of hours later, and if all four of us got on a big square bale and we started rocking it, we used to be able to push them all out. So Dad used to hate it. It'd be raining, but we'd be in the hay shed pushing out all these bales of hay to catch and kill a couple of possums to pluck them for our pocket money. But Dad would have to go get the tractor and stack it all away, and the hay was wet, so that only happened a few times. Then we worked out that you didn't have to roll them all the way out of the hay shed. You could wait a little bit till there's a bit of room and then just make a mess in the hay shed instead. So we had heaps of fun like that. We had awesome place to grow up. We're on a dairy farm where Mum and Dad are still there now. My older brother's gone back and taken over some of the farm. So we had the Manawatu River there. So we learnt all about farming, about growing up on reclaimed swamp, how it can get wet, erosion, and that kind of installed that farming belief in all four of us. And we've all got that farming in our blood because Mum and Dad were dairy farmers, but Mum came from a sheep and beef farm from Colvin down here in the South Island. So kind of always had the foot in each camp, being a North Islander, but Mum was always saying that the South was better, and if you cut the power lines, the South Island would stay where it was, and the North Island would just float away. So we definitely had that rivalry growing up. But for myself, really enjoyed primary school. Probably didn't spend a lot of time concentrating in the classroom, but loved all the family connections that I had at school. We had uncles and aunties that would pick us up, drop us off, take us to rugby, take us to sport, and heaps of cousins at school. Left Opaki Primary School, went to intermediate in town, and that was great for me, going from where I was pretty comfortable, kind of realised I had to work a little bit harder to achieve what I wanted to in the classroom, which set me up for high school. And the whole way through intermediate and primary school, gave everything a go, whether that was calf club, whether that was playing touch, cross country. We just wanted to give everything a crack, and we felt like we gave it a pretty good go. But once we got to high school, went to boarding school, I soon realised that getting into trouble in third and fourth form probably wasn't the place that I wanted to be. I had to change a few friends. The school principal always said you're the average of your 5 best friends, and worked out pretty quickly that my 5 best friends probably weren't on the right path. And that's when I really fell in love with basketball, and the guys in the basketball team really helped me to change what I was doing, the direction I was heading, and then fell back in love with the farm through being at Fielding High School, which was Fielding Agricultural High School at that stage. So loved going to ag and hort, and they were my best subjects because that's what I loved doing when I was younger, and loved, being somewhat closer to the top of the class versus being the one in trouble, and that's kind of what got me through high school. And from that was where I thought I'd end up. But in saying that, when that happened, rugby started to potentially become more of an option. And Chrissy and Gerard have heard this story before, but I was walking back to class after lunchtime, and I overheard one of the school teachers, who was a PE teacher, and he definitely said Samuel's going to be not just a one-test All Black, he's going to be a great All Black. And I don't know if he said it to make sure that it was, if he said it so I could hear him, or if he had just said it out of his own way. But I definitely thought he said it without me, without knowing that I was there listening, just as I was walking past. And that was something that I definitely needed, just to install that belief in myself. And from there, that's when I first internally thought, if he thinks I can do it, maybe I can play for Manawatu, or be lucky enough to have a go at Super Rugby. And I would have been about 15 at the time, and from there things just took off. I grew probably another foot over those Christmas holidays, and at school I was about 202, but about 95 kg, so I was definitely a tall spring bean, really. I didn't have a lot of meat on me. And then just as it all kind of happened, decided that I wanted to go to Lincoln University after I left high school, come down to Canterbury and give it a good crack, because Canterbury was where Mum was brought up, and I thought that, okay, this was, a place to come and have a look, reconnect with a few cousins and uncles and aunties, which was great. And I've had the privilege of playing professional rugby with a few of them. From there, walked into Lincoln University and was studying. Initially wanted to do something around a bit more around animals and maybe some ecology stuff, but really found that I wanted to go back to the horticulture side. So I ended up studying and ended up with a Bachelor of Science majoring in plant science. So I'm actually looking forward to asking a few of you guys a few questions around why my veggie garden is terrible. But I'm sure you'll just laugh because my lawn is definitely too long and at times probably up there with one of the worst around doing it. But one thing I will show you, and this is what I used to love doing before I had kids, and I've got 3 lovely children. So I met my wife on the first day of uni, and here we are 15 odd years later with 3 kids. So I've got Fred who's 5, Iris who's 3, and Penelope's 9, 10 months old. But we used to love growing giant pumpkins. So I just went back and found a few photos, and my biggest one I managed to grow was bigger than my wife. So I got that to about 65 kgs. So that was my little thing I used to love doing before we had kids. But since we've had 3 kids and rugby's really taken off, I'd hate to admit the veggie garden's pretty poor. So hopefully you guys can skill me up and give me a few ideas on what to do. But besides that, I've always loved getting into the garden, and my grandfather on my father's side has always had green fingers. Mum's aunties and mum has always had green fingers too. So love getting into the garden, and that's one of the things that I definitely use to get away from the things that can stress me out, can potentially put me under a bit of pressure. So I love getting into the garden, whether it's just mowing the lawns, because I know it roughly takes me about 40 minutes, and that's enough time for me just to stop, think about what I need to, or actually getting into the garden and planting some new varieties of trees or flowers, whatever my wife's telling me to do. So that's something that I definitely do to hopefully get myself back to where I need to. But it's pretty cool hearing you guys, or I know the story with Farm Strong is pretty new to the vegetable growing world, but I'll just, before I open up to questions, I want to explain why I wanted to put my name and work with Farm Strong. So mum and dad, as I said, are dairy farmers, and at the time they'd been dairy farming for 30 odd years, and they had and still do have an awesome support network around them, some great neighbours, family are just down the road, uncles, aunties, dad's sister, etc. So they've got this great little support network there. Community's outstanding, and there's a real good culture in that area. But mum and dad went through some hard times because the milking herd got salmonella, and the vet had recommended to dad to try to stop salmonella going through the whole herd. Dad had to shoot, I think it was 180 of the young stock, calves, yearlings, heifers, and about 200 of the milking herd. So dad left one morning with the 22, and he left at about 6 in the morning because the vet had recommended this after it kept getting worse over the last 12 to 24 hours. Dad got back a couple of hours later, and mum just said to him, "Oh, you'd be happy that's done." And dad just said, "No, it's not finished yet. I'm out of bullets." Dad had to come home and get more bullets. So what they went through, having to do that, not just killing the stock, but it was killing their livelihood, killing the genetics that they'd worked on for not only the 30 years, but it was the genetics from granddad and nana's farm that dad first inherited and had grown up with himself. So there was the massive pressure there. Mum definitely took it hard. She didn't leave the house for 3 weeks. Dad had to, but dad had all of a sudden started talking about retiring. So I looked at them, and you always look at your parents as your heroes. They had an outstanding support network, but they really struggled with that. So I thought, imagine if someone was new to farming and had no support around them, how could you help? And that's when Farm Strong for me fitted so well, and we've had a pretty awesome ride so far, and we'd like to say we've made a big difference with a number of people, but we know the journey's only just started, and we'd like to keep touching as many as we can. And hopefully there's someone on the call tonight that leaves it and goes, "I'm in a great spot," or they might recognise someone else that might need some help and be brave enough to ask a few questions and hopefully listen. So that's a 5-6 minute roundup of who I am. Gerard will no doubt throw a few curly questions at
thanks,
you now.
Sam. So actually, we've got some great questions coming through. So I will start with this one actually. Just, pressure is part of work and life and sport. What are some of the things that you do that resets you for the next challenge?
Yep. Pressure is pressure. I think the best thing about pressure is the right amount of pressure is great, but you cannot have too much pressure, all that pressure happen over a long period. And that's something that I definitely deal with rugby, and sometimes because we play every Saturday or Friday or Saturday or Sunday, it actually sets your week up quite nicely to have an opportunity to ride the wave as such. Yeah, it's full on, it's intense, you play the game, but all of a sudden you might have an opportunity the next day to have an hour with my children or my wife, and that's something that definitely resets me. Kids are very, very humbling. You can be having the game of your life and you get home, and my son seems to do this all the time because he's just started Ripper. He's like, "Dad, why didn't you score a try?" And you're like, "Well, I'd love to score a try, but I'm probably not the fastest guy out there, and I don't have fancy footwork, so it's not my job to score tries." But that they definitely bring you back down to earth when you need to, but at the same time they also give you energy when things aren't going that well. And I see there's a question in there talking around losing in the World Cup to England, and it's something that still hurts me, and I see this person is put there, it's still affecting them, especially to England. And that's where you've got to go to those other things that fill your cup up, and kids are great for that. Talking about that incident especially, it's something that we can't, well, for myself personally and the team, we talked about it afterwards, was we can't let that one occasion or that one game define who you are or your rugby career, because at the same time you're still a husband, a son, a brother, all those things. So yes, it's part of your life, and it's a massive part of my life. I've spent so much time since I was 3 playing rugby, and I'm 33 now, so that's 30 odd years of trying to get better and evolve and grow. And it seems weird, but that was just kind of our upbringing. I remember, because I'm 3 of 4, the older 2 brothers were obviously bigger, stronger, faster, fitter, so they used to send us out on the run to the old bus stop, which was about 4 kilometers. So they'd know what your time was, and they'd be like, "Right, you go now. I'm going to start running 45 seconds after you." And you're going flat tack, and you get to a stage and you turn, and all of a sudden they turn just after you, and then you're going for it, and all of a sudden you get pipped on the line. Those things actually build your resilience. So, we didn't know that as kids, but that's things that you turn to when, on the biggest stage for a rugby player, you lose at a semi-final. There are things that you can look at and go, okay, I can't let this define me. I can use this as a challenge to get better. You can take the positives out of it. And sometimes it's really hard to do, and don't get me wrong, it is hard when you're looking at some of those things.
Yeah. So actually, I'll pick up on this other question, because there's quite a bit in here, and I'm really keen to. So this person's talking about, look, they've been to some seminars on mental health, and what they've taken out a message is, look, you've got to get off the farm, just clear the buzz. But the question is, look, it's really hard to do when you're in a small family business, especially the veggie sector, and then especially if your passion is on the farm at home. So just sort of like you to just reflect on that around, is that a problem if your passion is on there and you're working all the time? If your passion was rugby, you guys don't train every day of the week, because it would affect your performance, wouldn't it? So
yeah, rugby is a funny one, and for me, one of my releases at the moment is having some land in Hawke's Bay. So I've going through, like yard designs and all that stuff now. So for me, when I get home from rugby, that's something that I use to get away from from that. But in saying that, I've seen it at home. I've seen my brother do it. I've seen my parents doing it. You're sitting at home trying to get away from the farm. You look out the window and you see something, whether it's stock out, whether someone's working up the wrong paddock or whatever it is. Everyone deals with it. You go, I'll have that break later. And the biggest thing that I've learned from watching them and seeing them, and I know this is going to be my big challenge when we do go farming as well, that you've actually got a plan to get off farm. And I do this with rugby, and it was actually really nice. I did it last night with my wife, is if there's goals and things you want to achieve, when you do achieve it, you've got to reward yourself. And it's not saying you need to go and spend heaps of money and do all this and do all that. But I know for myself, if I play really well for a couple of games in a row and achieve some of my on-field goals that I want to, I'll take my wife out for dinner. And it's something that you should do anyway, but it's actually really nice to get away from my kids. Don't get me wrong, I love my kids, but sometimes it's nice to let the babysitter put them to bed. We go out for dinner and actually talk about things that aren't rugby, the kids or the farm, and just actually spend time together. And I find whenever I do that, I normally have a really good week, because when I do turn around to do something that I'm really passionate about, I have more interest in it and I have a better focus on it, which sounds funny to be better at something, you need time away from it. But that's what I found with rugby. When I first started, when I was 21, 22, 23, I tried to live and breathe rugby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Did I play better because of it? Probably not, no. What it actually meant is my game, and everyone has a different opinion, but I felt like I was going pretty good. And then all of a sudden I got to the stage where just fatigue hit in, got injured, and then I actually realized I needed to sort it out. And then all of a sudden my game started to take off again. So I was actually working out when to get away, when to do something different. And when you're in an environment with 30 or 40 guys, 25 players, 10, 15 management, you can actually go to someone, right, let's go play cards, let's go play backgammon or whatever it is. But that's where it's different with farming, is it's harder to do those things. So hopefully I've answered your question, but for myself, it's actually planning it and working out when you're going to do it. So you have a little goal where you can potentially have a lull in some of the work, and going out for dinner is one of the ways that I do it.
Yeah, and you're quite big on planning, aren't you? Saying that you're putting it in your diary and making it a commitment.
Yeah, it's something that once I kind of have it written down, then I can adjust things around it to make sure that I do it. Where if I say, we'll do it next week turns into next week, or all of a sudden it's months' time and you don't do it. And it's not saying that you can't be flexible in your thinking, because if you get bogged down with a lot of work and things happen, and we're all feeling this at the moment with COVID and the war and getting things in and out of the country, you've got to be pretty flexible and pretty fluid. But at the same time, if it's in your diary, it's nice to have it there as a reminder that you've got to do it.
Yeah. So I think again, just this question, because it's come up a few times where people are very passionate about what they do, and a lot of their identity, and you've already talked about that, there is risks having your whole identity tied up with one thing. But also, if you're putting all your time and energy into one thing, that maybe you're not noticing that you're not as fresh, or you're not maybe making quite a good decisions, like for you with rugby, when you said, you started to dip down a bit. Which is, I think it's that whole, what have you learned about that, sort of the importance of rest and recovery, and even just stepping back and having perspective when things are, when you're doing the same thing every day?
Yeah, with that, it's great as a rugby player, because win, loss or draw, you normally have another game the next week, so you can gloss over some of those harder things, but also gloss over some of the things that you've done really well. And I've talked to a lot of senior rugby players that I've played a lot of rugby with. Conrad Smith was one. He used to say, I didn't enjoy the good moments. It was always, right, next moment, let's get on, get ready for the next task, rather than actually sitting there. And it's not saying you need to go drink 10 beers or anything, but you might have one beer, and actually just relax and enjoy that moment with whatever you've just been successful in, whether it's playing a tough test match, whether it's scoring a good try, or actually just making someone else better because you've helped them grow throughout the week. All of a sudden that younger player is starting to fulfill some of their potential. And I think with that, I go back to my own personal career, and it's what I know well. And I think one of the best years I've had was 2017. But 2017 for me was a very busy and full-on year. We bought some land in the Hawke's Bay, which is where we're going to end up once rugby finishes. So we'll be there. It's a sheep and beef farm. I'd love to have a bit better understanding, and this is where my wife comes in because she studied viticulture and she's got a better understanding on soils and soil health and how to actually get better production, whether it's grass or growing a crop or whatever. But so that's where we're going. That actually really excites me. But 2017, so we bought that, had our first child. I was first named as the full-time captain for the Crusaders, captain the All Blacks for the first time. So that year was so full on, so busy. But what it did for me is it made me actually focus on what was important at that time, what was important right now. So when I walked out the door in the morning, I had to say goodbye to Fred and Hannah. And I knew I was at rugby, so I need to be at rugby. I don't have time to not be there and worry about everything else. And yeah, I was busy and under pressure, but I think it was the right amount of pressure for me in my career. I was at a stage where I needed a new challenge, and that role of being captain was what I needed. From there, the pressure on at home with a newborn, rocking and rolling with the new things of changing nappies and sleep and that. So we were very lucky with that, and I was lucky enough to win a few individual awards after having a successful year with the Crusaders and the All Blacks. But what I found is I couldn't keep up that pressure the next year. I still felt like I played pretty well, but I needed to make sure I had time to stop, reset, recharge. So when I was into it, that was the thing that I think definitely helped me, is having a really good year and then turning around and going, okay, right, how do I embrace some of these things and how do I get better? What's my process? What are my coping mechanisms? What are my triggers to know that I'm doing too much or potentially I'm cruising? So that's something that definitely helped. Looking back for me and going, right, 2017, and that's kind of my yardstick now. Am I playing as well as I was in 2017? I'd like to think I am, but everyone else is allowed their opinion on that. But that's what I go back to now, and that's where I set myself, and I want to be better than that.
Yeah. So you're quite, very results driven. Our call to action in Farm Strong is find out what works for you and lock it in. So I think that's, probably just that question around how you're getting that work-life balance. We're all a little bit different, but it is something to definitely reflect on, as you did, when you had a successful year, but you knew you couldn't sustain it. Look, this is another really good question that's come through. What's been your biggest challenge being a long-term AB, and how have you coped with it?
Yeah, great question. There's kind of three levels to that question, and hopefully I'll give you the right answers. So people talk about, what's it like to be an All Black? So level one, you kind of say, it's all luck. Level two, someone says, how's it been? You go, bit of luck and then a little bit of extra. So the hard work and the understanding of, timing of it. Sometimes it's arriving when there's an injury and making the most of the opportunity. But the third way to explain it with more depth is, there's luck, timing, but then it's also the hard work. People don't understand, people don't see what actually goes from the end of a game, from that last whistle to the start of the next game. That is the true thing that takes its toll on yourself, your family, your wife, your kids, your body. But the other things that I've learned to enjoy, and I had some amazing mentors and senior players that I was involved with that definitely set me up with that. So Brad Thorne was massive, and we played against the Reds last week, who He was head coach of, and had a great catch up with him after the game for 10 to 15 minutes. And it was like 10, 12 years ago when I was the 21-year-old going on, and he was the 35, 36-year-old that was just giving me all this knowledge and all this experience. At that stage, he'd been playing professional rugby for almost as long as I'd been alive. So it was great to take those things that he said, and it's amazing. Sometimes you listen just because he's in a different role, where if someone else had said it to me, potentially I might not have listened. But it was great. He talked to me around looking after my body, my mind, my family time. So he said, look, if you get a good one, hang on to her, get married. It's simple advice that you get given from everyone. And I was lucky enough to meet Hannah early on. We were already dating at that stage, started stretching. So that's something that I definitely pride myself on now, is my flexibility and my ability to be strong through range. And it's great having everyone on here, because nutrition was a massive one. So when I left school, I was probably, I think I was 98 kgs, and I was just wanted to get to that 100 kgs, being the same height I am now. But nutrition was a massive thing for me. And Brad Thorne, Owen Franks, Ben Franks, they would spend an extra $20,000 to $30,000 on their food than anyone else in the world professionally as rugby players. So they were going to the best high-end food and going, right, this is what I need. They were eating twice as much as anyone else, but they were getting the results through the ability to train hard, to recover faster. So learning those things from those people definitely helped me be where I am now. And I got asked that the other day by a couple of young locks who are the roles can be completely reversed. Like, I'm 33 now and they're 19 and 20, and they're going, how do I have a long career? And all those things are so important now. You cannot get left behind for 12 months, because it takes so much to catch up. People go past you straight away, whether that's the mental side of the game, the physical, the nutrition, all those things. It's the learning, the skill-based stuff. So you've got to be at the head of the game and make sure that you're always pushing yourself, but you can't push yourself that hard that it's too much and you break, whether that's your body or your love of the game.
That's a great answer, I think, to that question around the big challenge is to keep yourself mentally and physically fit so you can have a long career, and you've got yourself really informed about the things that will work for you, and you've tried them and you've had mentors around, and I think that actually is quite a good segue into this other. We've got some great questions coming through as well, so thanks guys, this is awesome. So this question, how significant is the support provided by the New Zealand Rugby Union in terms of how they've shaped your growth and well-being?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty good. Rugby is probably one of the only jobs in the world that they prepare you for your next job. So we have a thing which is PDM, personal development role, or a mentor, or whatever it's meant to be. I'm not sure. I've been around too long, I've forgotten it. But you get a 4-hour window every week during Super Rugby and the provincial competition that you get to work on yourself. So whether that's making sure you have a will, you go into a lawyer and making sure that you have a property relationship agreement. If you just met someone, you get to upskill yourself, whether it's public speaking, all those things. You get to try different jobs, different roles, and actually work out why and what you're interested in going forward. Because the reality is, and these numbers are not good, for the average rugby career is 4 years. The rate of depression of people coming out of a rugby career with issues with their body, so it might be an elbow or a shoulder that's a bit dodgy, a knee that they've blown everything to pieces, MCL, ACLs, all those things, they're really, really high for rugby players. And the scary thing is, the longer you are involved in rugby, the higher those issues can become. Depression is one of the major ones, because you think, yep, you can earn some very good money playing rugby, you can have some stardom, whether some people want that or don't, I'm probably one that shies away from it to a point. But all of a sudden, you go from people wanting to talk to you walking down the street, people are happy to say good day, they might buy you a free coffee or whatever it is, to all of a sudden, people don't care. The rate of divorces and things like that is actually really, really high. And that window of when people retire to when they actually get back on their feet. So Ali Williams actually said it to me. It took him 2 years. He wanted to hide, and it kind of took him 2 years to kind of work out what he wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, he's away now. I went through some pretty tough times, but yet again, he was a senior All Black that I had in the team when I was there, and been lucky enough to talk to some of those guys around what they've felt and what they've had. So hopefully I've, like Jared said, I'm a bit of a planner. So hopefully I've planned for some of those things to not eliminate them, but just make sure that the dip is not all the way down. It's just a smoothish dip, and then we can carry on from there.
Because it can be very challenging in farming, particularly, even around succession planning, around if someone's had their whole life tied up with farming and then it's time, for them to maybe move on and have other people coming through and taking the farm to the next stage. So I think really what I think you've done is shared some of the support that you've had, anticipating that obviously the sports career is a little bit shorter than the career on the farm.
I think with that too, with farming, it's similar to rugby too, because you're actually only one major injury away from all of a sudden you can't work. Whether that's rugby, you blow something to pieces completely, then your career's done right then and there. And yes, there's things in place to try and mitigate that, and we have some outstanding physios and doctors and specialists that we can tap into. But the reality is you can go from running around being fit and healthy to all of a sudden you're lying on your back in a bed and you just had surgery on something, and I've just had it on my finger, broke that, and then turned around and I broke my thumb because the finger was getting in the way and decided to thumb on someone's knee. So it just happens, in the space of 10 weeks, broken 2 bones and frustrating, can't operate the way I want to. And that's the way with farming as well. If someone gets a sore back, it can stop you and can influence the way you want to operate on your farm. And I think with that too, it's actually being proactive around it. So a lot of our stuff in the gym is prehab, so doing things before injuries happen, so you're actually strong to and Brad Thorne used to say it, look, build an engine, build all these shields up, big strong body, so then if you do have big contacts you can deal with it, versus rehab going, look, you've blown something to pieces, we'll get this back to as good as we can, but it's not going to be at 100%, it might be at 80%, and then you have issues for the rest of your career, and then potentially after hanging up the boots.
Actually, this is another great question. How do you manage the outside noise, criticism? As a veggie growers, we're under constant pressure to defend a position, whether it's climate change, nitrogen, that just moved, nitrogen, all great media sound bites. So how do, what's your advice around just that?
Yeah, this question seems to come up no matter where we are in the rural sector, whether it's dairy farmers, whether it's sheep and beef, waterways, ribarian planting. It seems to be there everywhere. And the thing that I'm personally concerned about is the town-rural split. I think it's getting bigger and larger. And the problem is these cell phones. And when I say cell phones, I mean social media, because everyone's allowed their opinion. And what I do for myself is, and this probably goes back to university, is actually work out where and what the right information is. Is this someone's opinion piece? And this is what I have to do with rugby all the time. Everyone on this call, if you said to them, right, you put your top 15 players out there, who would it be? I'm sure not one of them would be the same. Everyone would have their different player that they want to play, their different style. I'd like to think I'd hopefully make a couple of your teams, but we'll have to wait for that one and see. But what I'm saying is they're just that, they're opinion pieces. So making sure that you're keeping up with the regulations of what is needed legally around different rates of nitrogen, and it's the same for us as rugby players. The reality is we need to impress 3 people. So they're the 3 selectors for the All Blacks, and you need to impress them. Everyone else are nice to haves, but for myself, I go for more than 3. I go for my close friends, my family. And if I'm going out there and I have a good work ethic and I've got good effort out there, that's as good as I can give. If that's not enough for some people, that's easy. That's fine. I won't go and read the media because of that. It is pretty easy to get caught up in a comment section and start scrolling and reading it when you do have some downtime. But what I found, that just feeds those negative thoughts that, you know, some people definitely dine out on. And it's easy to be a keyboard warrior. And I was lucky enough to learn this early in my career. And the reason I learned it was because, yet again, some of those senior players passed on some of their knowledge. I was lucky enough to be part of the 2011 World Cup here in New Zealand. I was 23 at the time, but every media session that I went to, it was, now you're 23 and you haven't won the World Cup for 24 years, you know, all these questions. And all the guys said, look, don't read the paper, don't read stuff. They said, if you have to read it, open it up, look at the pictures and then shut it, because all of it will be an opinion piece and they'll just be trying to load pressure onto you because they're just trying to get an easy soundbite out of you. They're trying to get you to feel the pressure because that sells papers. The negative articles, not many people actually write the positive ones. And that's just the way the human brain is programmed. I did hear it today from Dr. Kerry Evans that your mind has all these different ideas and thoughts, but 80% of them are negative. So people do focus on those 80% negative. But what I heard is, why not talk about the 20%, all those positive ones? Because if you do that, all of a sudden, you know, instead of you being 20% positive, you might be 25% positive, and all of a sudden you're getting ahead because you're having more positive thoughts, and the endorphins and all the scientific side of it is all starting to kick in. So,
and then I think again that, you know, sometimes it's the small percentage that make the biggest noise, and we forget that actually the largest percentage are really supportive of, you know, people playing sport, people growing vegetables. But, you know, we don't often hear from them, and we forget that, you know, sometimes a headline is it's a minority view.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And the way I had my sister-in-law, who's an ex-primary school teacher, she said, look, there's 30 kids in the class, but the 2 naughtiest normally get, you know, 90% or 80% of the attention. So what they're doing now is actually going, okay, I'm not going to spend my time with you. You 2 can go see the principal and let the principal deal with them. I'm going to spend time with the other 28 or 29 kids that are there. So it's a squeaky wheel gets the attention. But that's the sad thing. Very rarely you see the people that are doing it well, doing it right, and actually doing everything better than they have to. They don't get the credit they deserve, and that's the hard thing. So, and answering that question that is up there, making sure that you focus on the good stuff is probably how I'd sum it up real quickly. Yeah, no, that's a great answer, Sam. And then actually, this is a great question as well. Is, you know, how do you think we break down some of the masculine stereotype associated with farming? Do we just need to stop and ask people if they're okay? How many times do we need to ask before they open up? And I've heard you talk about this before. This is this is one that's close to my heart. So I had some bad news the other day. My grandfather, who was 91, passed away, and had to fly the Waratahs, and we didn't play that well, so we ended up losing. But our team doctor, who has a great social awareness and really good at reading people's body languages, he said to me, look, you want to go for a swim? We were staying at Coogee, where Coogee's got a beautiful beach break and body surfing, and it was a nice day. So I was like, yeah, let's go. And that was perfect for me. So he actually started talking to me and asked me exactly that. He said, how you doing? Are you okay? And for him to say that when we went body surfing at the beach was the perfect location for me, because if it was awkward, I could dive under a wave and change the subject. But if I wanted to engage, I had that opportunity there. Where if he said to me, let's go get a coffee, sits down opposite me, eye to eye, that would have been the worst thing that he could have done. So what he did is he asked the right question in the right environment. It was between him and I, and it was just perfect. So I kind of got off my chest what I needed to with, feeling the pressure of being away from my brothers who I hadn't seen altogether for, it was about 2.5 years. I got home for the funeral. I was back in Palmerston North for about 7 hours and had to get on the plane to fly back to Christchurch to catch my early flight out in the morning. That was probably one of the hardest things I had to do because I was torn and split, but I actually came out of that in a really good spot because Doc was outstanding in the way he asked and the location and the timing of when he asked. So that was the thing that definitely helped me. The other one I want to share with you around stereotypes of asking people to open up. It's something that's probably very similar with rugby, and we're starting to get a little bit of movement there. And the one person that did it really well for myself as a younger player was Kevin Mialamu. He asked me in a great setting. Yet again, it was private, but at the same time, it wasn't so private that it was awkward. He said to me, "How you doing?" And he was reading my body language, and I said, "Oh, I'm sweet." I would have been 21, 22, pretty new to the team at this stage. But then he asked the exact same question, and then he just didn't say anything else. He said, "But how you really doing?" And he just used that pause and that timing to allow me to actually stop and go, "Oh, he's asking me the same question here," to actually have a real good think, actually, how am I doing? Because he had picked up on body language of myself, where I was at, and we were having some trouble with the line out or whatever it was. I can't quite remember. But he got me to open up, and the best thing he did is he actually listened. And this is something that Farmstrong definitely are really promoting, is being a good listener. But the best thing he did is he just let me talk. So I talked about the problem and then carried on and actually gave myself the solution. And the way he rounded it up is he just said, "Look, you know what to do, just go fix it." So he actually let me, for me, I didn't even know I had that issue. He saw it, he let me work it out, and then he allowed me to work out the solution rather than coming up to me and saying, "Hey, look, go sort this out and do this," because I wouldn't have thought that it was true. So the way he did that was awesome, and hopefully I'm passing on some of those little tricks to some of the senior players to help the younger guys at the moment.
Yeah, look, actually, that's really good advice, Sam. But I think what you've said is, one of them is find a place where the other person will be comfortable, and find a good time. Ask questions and maybe repeat the question, and and notice their body language. I think that whole thing that you've said around that Kevin, being comfortable with silence, like not filling the gap, just give them time, and then don't try to solve the problem for them. Use those questions for help them work it out. So I think that's really good advice around if someone's struggling. You're seeing someone is struggling. Those are pretty good. And as you say, we've got a UMAT Let's Natter. We're doing a promotion about and promoting, just good listening skills that are on the website if anyone wants to just review those as well. And it's a skill we can all learn and get better at, isn't it?
Yeah, big time. And something that kind of the flow on from that. So that happened early on in my career, and I always have remembered it. And the more I've kind of hung around rugby, I've seen some pretty cool occasions when that's worked. But then the other one is actually getting the right person to ask the questions. And sometimes, whether it's in a family business, a parent asking, children that are working in the business, sometimes there's that natural barrier there that they're never going to break because of just the way it is actually getting the right person to ask the question. So sometimes it's actually going to a good family friend and going, "Look, XYZ's having some trouble. I can see it. He or she is not opening up. They're not allowing to break down that wall." It's actually getting that different person to do it. And I think with rugby, we see it all the time with the different cultures that we're lucky enough to be involved with. I know in the island communities, sometimes you ask people, and because of the way their cultures are, if you're older than them, there's no way they're ever going to give you the problem. Where if you go to the right person, they'll directly give that problem, and they'll give you the solution too. So it's understanding what the right thing is for that person. And don't get me wrong, I have got it wrong a number of times, but it is nice when you potentially have seen something and then you ask someone, or you say to another leader or another person in a role, whether that's in the business or outside, to have a yarn, and then you can follow it up that way. It is rewarding when you do nail that one.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Really good advice, Sam. Look, this is a real quick question. It is a rugby one. Blues or the Brumbies?
I just hope we get the job done against the Chiefs. So that's all I'm thinking about at the moment. So,
go on, yeah.
We had a good training today, so hopefully we're prepared well. But you never know. Both teams will want to win. And it'll be the same with the Blues, Brumbies. But I'm sure the best two teams will be in the final.
Yeah, no, excellent. Now, actually, this one is you mentioned about sort of sometimes the challenge of depression. This person says depression is a thing. I'm a Warriors supporter. So, what are some of your strategies you have found helped you get up and get focused again?
I'd love to say I'm a Warriors supporter, but if they make that final at some stage, I'm sure I'll be able to find an old Warriors jersey and jump on the bandwagon like the rest of the country. But yeah, it can be hard supporting those teams. I'm always into some of the young guys. They're always chopping and changing in the NBA, saying, "Oh, I'm a Cavs fan when LeBron's there." Then he goes to Miami, and the next thing they're wearing a Miami top. Then now they're wearing a Lakers top. So I'm like, you got to pick one team and stick with it and go with the ups and downs. But in answering the question with depression, where it happens and how do I deal with it, I think the main thing for myself is actually trying to bank some good stuff early, so then I'm not running on E. So then if something can happen, whether that's a lack of form, a lack of understanding, something away from the rugby field, then I've actually got a little bit of leeway up my sleeve to go, actually I can deal with this and go solution focus and work out what and when I need to do something. That's what works for me. And something that I do know is when I have an opportunity to get away, it definitely helps. So I love hunting and fishing and grew up trout fishing on the Manawatu River and catching possums and doing all those things. But now I love getting out, shooting deer, catching the odd pig here and there. We're lucky down here in the South Island with tar and chamois. We've got a number of varieties of animals, and it's something that my kids love doing too. So getting away with them, with my wife, getting away from my phone. Sometimes it's just nice to turn your phone off and leave it in the truck because you're out of reception. Sometimes that is the case, but it's just a nice way to actually just forget about everything and spend some time with people you love and just get away. So then when the pressure does come on, you kind of have that little bit of deposit in the bank as such, to go from there. So that's what I try to do, and I know that works for some people, but for everyone else, you kind of got to work out what it is for you and try to put it in place to make sure you do it as much as you can.
Yeah, and we've got a really good video here on the website, Sam, just going through with Jeff Sparks, who's a farmer, just that whole wellbeing bank account thing, looking at your investments and withdrawals and just how you're making those investments. Someone's just asked about thinking strategies. We've also quite early on in Farmstrong, Tom Mulholland ran a whole lot of workshops and taught some thinking strategy skills. This particular one was around, twigging, he called it, where you ask 3 questions saying, is the thought true? Is it worth it? Will it help me achieve my goal? Because actually a lot of the thoughts we have actually aren't true. They're not worth it. They're not really helping you with what you're trying to achieve. Do you have any thinking strategies that you go to when you're under the pump?
For myself, there's kind of two ways I approach that. So for myself, on the field in a game, we have 80 minutes, and love it or hate it, that's what we're judged on as rugby players. So for myself, it's always whether I'm doing something really well or something that potentially is not going that well. So whether I've missed some tackles or made a mistake, given away a penalty or whatever it is, hopefully not too many of them, it's actually resetting myself back to zero to go, right, what is my next task? And that's how I try to deal with it on the field. And you can talk around positive thoughts, negative thoughts, depending on your understanding. We use some stuff around red head, blue head, and go back to I won't bore everyone with it. But for myself, it's actually taking whatever issue it was, how do I turn that into a positive? Where is the opportunity to be better? Being proactive around it versus reactive. And that's the same off the field too, but you have a little bit more time off the field to actually stop and think and go, right, what is, like you said, is this thought true? And is this helping me? And something I heard the other day, and I thought it was really good, the way we talk to ourselves inside our brain with that little voice, if we talk to that way to someone else, there's no way anyone would let that happen. So actually being, sometimes it might sound a bit fluffy and that, but it's actually just being kind to yourself and going, right, what have I actually done well? What are the positives out of this? How do I use this to get better going forward? And whether that's pressure coming on through different weather events to go, okay, I've got this understanding, this is what happens in this paddock. I don't want to put stock in there because they're going to pug it up. I might put them down by, a river terrace because it's a bit more stony. It's going to absorb a bit more water quicker. So then I'm not going to munt the crop that's there or the grass pasture. On the farming side of it, I'm not quite sure how you can relate that back to the vegetable side. There's some outstanding people on here that have been in the vegetable growing business for more than 15 years. I'd love to actually hear what they say, or I challenge the younger people in this group to actually get alongside those guys and say, look, what are your answers? What are your solutions to these problems? Because they might have already been through it. And I think of the Horowhenua area at the moment, how they've had some of those tornadoes and severe weather events go through. I'm sure the community will have one or two people, potentially more, that it might have had a bad event like that in the past. So getting the crops back to where they need to, whether it's planting, germination, making sure that the photosynthesis is happening at the right stage. Talking to those people, the other people that I'd be getting up alongside and actually asking some of those questions, because I'm sure they want to pass on that knowledge, but it's finding the right environment to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's an introduction. You got to put yourself out there and find a number and ring them up, or go see them in person and say, hey, look, can I buy you a beer or buy you a coffee and quiz you for 10 minutes and build a relationship that way.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. That's just awesome. I think what you're really saying there, is also don't isolate yourself, because if you're only living in your own head and not getting some reality check on that as well as and being kind to yourself, sometimes we create this internal world where we're our worst supporter, really, aren't we? Look, it's 8:30 and I can't believe that's been an hour. And the questions have been fantastic coming through. I just want to do a final plug for a book that we've got, because someone did ask about the book. This is freely available, 29 stories of farmers and growers. There's a chap in here that I'm sure a lot of you may know, we've done a story on Older and Wiser. So that's Alan Fong, who's sharing what he's learned over the years. But yeah, 29 other farmers and growers. Chrissy will send out, she'll send out an email to you. So if you did want a copy of this book for yourself or to give away to other people, we can organise that through email. But look, Sam, just want to say thanks very much for your time, but particularly want to thank all those who've been online with these fantastic questions. I think all of us will take away different things from this, but they'll all be helpful.
Awesome. thanks, mate. Anthony, want to thank you personally for organising this. It's always a bit weird, on a Zoom call. Can only see a few faces, but ideally would be doing this in a room somewhere. But just the way the world is at the moment, it is a bit challenging. But hopefully get to meet everyone, and would love to get going on a big pumpkin growing competition at some stage. Hopefully I can get over that 100 kgs mark at some stage. I've got a few plans, but just need those kids to grow up a bit and stop ripping the pumpkins off the vine when they start growing. So yeah.
Thank you, Sam. It was I got so much out of that. All these kind of catchwords. I know they're not just catchwords. They're definitely a lot of thought in behind them. But look, big thank you from not only Vegetables New Zealand, but the Pukekohe Vegetable Growers Association.
Thank you very much, and have a good night, everyone. And hopefully, like Gerald said, everyone has taken something out of it.